He thought he'd buried his past beneath an empire of silence. But some secrets have your eyes. 3 pairs of them. Standing in a hotel lobby, on his honeymoon, with another woman's ring on his finger. She disappeared 6 years ago without a word. Now she's back. With the truth he was never supposed to know, ever. And a danger that could destroy them all. This is the story of a man who ruled the underworld, but couldn't escape the only thing that ever made him human. Welcome back to another Afro-Korean story that will stay with you long after it ends. Before we begin, please subscribe and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything. Now let's dive into this unforgettable journey. The Amalfi Coast had never looked more like a postcard. Azure water, white cliffs, lemon groves bleeding gold into the afternoon light. Jae-sung stood in the marble lobby of the Grand Hotel Vesuvio, his new wife's laughter somewhere behind him, and felt his heart stop. Not slow. Stop. Because across the polished floor, near the concierge desk where tourists asked about boat tours and wine tastings, stood a woman he'd buried 6 years ago. Not literally, though he'd wanted to. She wore a simple white dress. Her hair was longer now, pulled back in a way that made her look older, wiser, tired in a way that had nothing to do with travel. And beside her, 3 children, boys, identical, maybe 5 years old, with his eyes. Jae-sung didn't breathe, didn't blink. The world narrowed to the width of a hallway, and the distance between what he'd believed and what was standing 15 feet away. "Jae, are you listening?" His wife's voice floated toward him like a sound from another dimension. Mira, 28. Beautiful. Safe. The daughter of a shipping magnate who didn't ask questions about late-night meetings or the men who followed Jae-sung through soul-like shadows. She touched his arm. He didn't feel it. "I asked if you wanted to have dinner at the Terrace restaurant tonight. Or, Jae?" Across the lobby, one of the boys laughed, high and bright. The sound cut through marble and memory like a blade through silk. The woman, Naomi, turned. Their eyes met. And the 6 years between them evaporated like morning fog over the Han River. She froze. Her hand tightened around a small suitcase. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. One of the boys tugged her dress. "Mommy, you said we could see the boats." "Mommy." The word landed in Jae-sung's chest like a bullet he couldn't remove. "Jae?" Mira's voice sharpened. "You look pale. Are you feeling all right?" He forced himself to breathe. To turn. To look at the woman he'd married 3 days ago in a ceremony that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. "I'm fine," he said. His voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "You don't look fine." Mira frowned, concern creasing her perfect face. "Maybe you should sit down. The flight was long and I need a moment." He walked away before she could respond. Not toward Naomi. Toward the bar. Toward something that resembled air. Behind him, he heard Mira's heels clicking against marble. Confusion in her voice as she called his name. But he couldn't stop. Because if he stopped, he'd turn around. And if he turned around, he'd have to face the impossible. That the woman he'd loved, the woman who'd vanished without a word, without a note, without even the decency of a lie, had been raising his children. Children he didn't know existed. Children who had his eyes and her smile and a whole life he'd never been part of. The bar was empty, except for a bartender polishing glasses, with the kind of focus that suggested he'd learned not to notice hotel drama. "Whiskey," Jae-sung said. "Double. Neat." His hands didn't shake when he lifted the glass. They never did. That was the training. The years of standing in rooms where showing weakness meant dying. Where a single tremor could cost more than money. He'd built an empire on stillness. On the ability to look at a man and decide his fate without blinking. But right now, staring into amber liquid that caught the Italian sunlight, Jae-sung felt like a boy again, lost, angry, terrified. "Sir?" The bartender's voice was gentle, practiced. "Your wife is asking for you." Jae-sung turned. Mira stood at the bar entrance, elegant and worried, her honeymoon glow dimming under the weight of questions she didn't know how to ask. And beyond her, Near the elevator bank, Naomi shepherded 3 small boys toward the brass doors. She didn't look back, but one of the boys did. The smallest one. With Jae-sung's eyes and a curiosity that felt like staring into a mirror from 27 years ago, the elevator doors closed. They were gone. Jae? Mira's hand found his shoulder. What's wrong? You're scaring me. He looked at his wife, at her designer dress and diamond earrings, and the life they were supposed to start together. A life built on the grave of everything he used to be. Nothing, he said. The lie tasted like ash. I just need to make a phone call. The terrace restaurant overlooked the Mediterranean like a painting someone forgot to finish. Perfect. Beautiful. Incomplete. Mira ordered seafood. She talked about tomorrow's yacht tour, about the villa in Positano her father had recommended, about how marriage suited him. Jae-sung heard none of it. His phone sat on the white tablecloth like a grenade. He'd excused himself twice already. Once to the bathroom. Once to take a business call that consisted of him standing on a stone balcony, staring at waves, trying to remember how to think. Naomi was here, in this hotel, with his sons. Sons. The word still didn't feel real. He'd spent 6 years building walls around the place where she used to live inside him. 6 years convincing himself that her absence was a choice, that she'd looked at what he was, what he'd become, and decided she wanted no part of it. He'd been 26 when they met. She'd been a graduate student, literature. She read poetry in coffee shops and laughed at his jokes and never asked about the men who called him at 3 a.m. He'd loved her the way drowning men love air. Desperately. Completely. Without strategy. And then one morning, she was gone. No note. No call. Her apartment empty except for furniture that wasn't hers. He'd searched. Of course he'd searched. Used every resource his family's organization had. Called in favors that cost him alliances. Turned Seoul upside down looking for a woman who'd become a ghost. Nothing. It was like she'd been erased. And after 6 months of searching, Jae-sung had done what men in his position do. He'd buried it. Locked it away. Built something new on top of the grave. He'd taken over operations his father had been too cautious to touch. Expanded the family's reach. Became the kind of man people whispered about in rooms where secrets had weight. The crime lord. The ice king. The man who didn't flinch. And then, 2 years ago, he'd met Mira at a charity gala. She was elegant. Poised. From a world that understood power without asking how it was made. The marriage made sense. Strategic. Clean. Safe. But now, you haven't touched your food. Mira's voice cut through the noise in his head. Jae-sung looked down. His plate was full. The wine glass beside it empty. I'm not hungry, he said. You've barely spoken since we arrived. Mira set down her fork. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held questions. If something's wrong, if you're having second thoughts. I'm not. The lie came easily. Too easily. She studied him, then nodded, picked up her wine glass. My father warned me, she said quietly, that marrying you would mean marrying silences, secrets, late-night calls and locked doors. Jae-sung met her gaze. I didn't promise you easy, he said. No. Mira's smile was sad. You promised me honest. That's different. The accusation landed soft, but it landed. She stood, placed her napkin on the table with the kind of grace that came from a lifetime of diplomatic dinners and carefully managed emotions. I'm going to bed, she said. When you're ready to tell me what's really wrong, I'll listen. She walked away. Jae-sung watched her go, then pulled out his phone. His fingers hovered over the screen. He had resources. People who could find anyone. People who could tell him what room Naomi was in, what name she was using, how long she planned to stay. One call. That's all it would take. But if he made that call, if he opened that door, everything would change. His marriage, his carefully constructed new life. The walls he'd spent 6 years building. And the children. God. The children. 3 boys who looked like him. Who had his eyes and her smile and a whole existence he'd known nothing about. What did you say to that? How did you stand in front of 3 5-year-olds and explain that you didn't know they existed? That their mother had made a choice to keep them from you? That you were the kind of man whose world was too dangerous for small hands and innocent questions? Jae-sung stared at the phone. Then he stood, walked to the bar, ordered another whiskey. The bartender, same one from earlier, poured without comment. Rough honeymoon? He asked. Jae-sung almost laughed. You could say that. Let me guess. The bartender leaned against the counter. Ex-girlfriend. Showed up at the worst possible time, probably with a kid. Jae-sung's expression didn't change, but something in his silence made the bartender's eyebrows rise. 3 kids, Jae-sung said quietly. Triplets. The bartender whistled. Wow, that's a movie plot. It's my life. What are you going to do? Jae-sung lifted the glass, drank, set it down. I don't know. The bartender nodded, poured another without being asked. For what it's worth, he said. Guys like you, guys who look like they've got everything figured out, usually don't. The ones who think they do? They're the ones who lose everything. Jae-sung looked at him. You a philosopher? I'm a bartender. Same thing. Despite everything, despite the chaos and the impossibility and the way his entire life had just fractured, Jae-sung smiled, small, brief, but real. Keep the bottle, he said. Then he walked out. Not toward his room, toward the elevator, toward the floor where he knew, somehow, instinctively, Naomi was putting 3 boys to bed, toward the conversation he'd been avoiding for 6 years. The 4th floor was quiet. Too quiet. Jae-sung stood in the hallway outside room 447, his hand raised to knock, and realized he didn't know what to say. Hi. Remember me? The father of your children? Why did you leave? Why didn't you tell me? Do they know about me? Every question felt wrong. Behind the door, he heard water running. A child's voice asking something. Naomi's response, muffled but familiar. That same tone she'd used when they'd lived together, when she'd explained poetry to him like it was something that mattered. He lowered his hand. This was insane. He was standing outside a hotel room on his honeymoon, about to confront a woman who'd disappeared, about to meet children who didn't know he existed. A smart man would walk away, go back to his wife, his new life, pretend he'd never seen anything. But Jae-sung had stopped being smart the moment he'd chosen this world, the moment he'd decided power mattered more than peace. He knocked. Silence. Then footsteps. The door opened 6 inches. A security chain caught. Naomi's face appeared in the gap. She looked older up close. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. A tiredness that went deeper than exhaustion. But she was still beautiful. Still the woman who'd made him believe he could be more than what his family name demanded. Jae-sung. His name in her mouth sounded like an apology. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you. Her eyes closed, opened. Please, just go back to your wife. Pretend you didn't see us. Pretend? His voice stayed low, but the anger beneath it was sharp enough to cut. You want me to pretend I didn't just see my 3 sons in a hotel lobby? They're not... She stopped, swallowed. It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it. I can't. Naomi? Mommy? A small voice from inside the room. One of the boys. Jae-sung couldn't see him, but the sound of it, high and sleepy and so impossibly innocent, made something in his chest crack. Naomi's expression shifted. Protective. Fierce. I have to go, she said. No. Jae-sung put his hand on the door. Not forcing. Just present. We're talking about this. Not here. Not now. Then when? She hesitated. Her eyes searched his face like she was looking for something she'd lost. Tomorrow, she said finally. There's a cafe, 2 blocks west of here, called Il Limoni. Meet me there at 9. The boys will be with a sitter. Naomi, please. Her voice cracked. Just give me tonight. Let me figure out how to explain this. How to... She stopped. You deserve answers. I know that. But I need time. Jae-sung wanted to argue, to push the door open, to demand everything right now. But the way she looked at him, like she was barely holding herself together, like one more question might shatter her completely. He stepped back. 9 o'clock, he said. She nodded, then closed the door. Jae-sung stood in the hallway for a long moment, his hand still raised, his heart still racing. From inside the room, he heard Naomi's voice, soft, gentle, singing something in a language he didn't recognize. A lullaby. For their sons. He turned, walked back toward the elevator. The hotel felt different now, like it was holding its breath, waiting to see what would break first, his marriage, his past, or the carefully constructed empire he'd built on pretending nothing could touch him. When he reached his room, Mira was asleep, or pretending to be. Jae-sung stood in the doorway, watching her breathe, and wondered if this was the last night of the life they were supposed to have. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, he'd sit across from the woman who'd disappeared and learn the truth about why she'd left. About the sons she'd kept from him. About the 6 years of silence that had nearly destroyed him. Tomorrow, he'd have to decide what kind of man he wanted to be. The crime lord who controlled everything. Or the father who'd just discovered he had a family. He couldn't be both. Could he? Jae-sung walked to the window, looked out at the Mediterranean, at the endless black water, and the stars scattered above it like broken promises. Somewhere in this hotel, 3 boys were falling asleep. Boys with his eyes, his blood, his future. And he didn't even know their names. The phone in his pocket buzzed. A message. From one of his men back in Seoul. Sir, we have a situation. Rival family making moves. Need your authorization. Jae-sung stared at the screen. The underworld didn't stop for honeymoons. Or lost loves. Or children you didn't know existed. It kept moving. Kept demanding. Kept taking. He typed a response. 3 words that had decided the fate of more men than he wanted to count. Handle it quietly. Then he turned off the phone. Tomorrow, he'd face Naomi. Tomorrow, he'd learn the truth. Tonight, he'd stand in this room and try to remember who he'd been before power became his only language. Before he became the kind of man women ran from. Before he lost everything that mattered. The city below glittered like scattered diamonds. Beautiful. Cold. Just like everything he'd built. Jae-sung closed his eyes. And for the first time in 6 years, he let himself imagine a different ending. One where the woman didn't disappear. Where the children knew his name. Where being powerful and being human weren't opposite sides of an impossible choice. Behind him, Mira stirred. Jay? Her voice was thick with sleep. Come to bed. He didn't move. In a minute, he said. But they both knew it was a lie. Il Limone smelled like espresso and lemon zest. Small tables, white walls. Morning light filtering through sheer curtains that made everything look softer than it was. Jae-sung arrived at 8:45, 15 minutes early. Old habits. In his world, arriving early meant controlling the space, choosing the seat, seeing who entered before they saw you. He picked a corner table, back to the wall, eyes on the door, ordered an espresso he wouldn't drink, and waited. Mira had been awake when he left. She'd asked where he was going. He'd said he needed to clear his head, take a walk, think. She hadn't believed him, but she'd nodded, kissed his cheek, told him she'd be at the hotel spa if he needed her. The guilt sat in his stomach like broken glass. At 8:58, the cafe door opened. Naomi stepped inside. She wore jeans and a cream sweater, her hair down, no makeup. She looked like the woman he'd known 6 years ago, before she became a ghost, before she carried secrets that weighed more than truth. Their eyes met. She crossed the cafe slowly, sat down across from him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Coffee? Jae-sung asked. His voice was steady, controlled. The same voice he used in boardrooms where one wrong word could start wars. Please. He signaled the waiter, ordered her an Americano. Black. No sugar. He remembered. When the waiter left, Naomi's hands folded on the table. Her fingers laced together like she was praying, or holding herself still. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. Did you think I wouldn't? I didn't know what to think. Her eyes lifted to his. I never thought I'd see you again. Especially not here. Not like this. Then why did you come to this hotel? I didn't know you'd be here. I swear. It's just... She exhaled. Bad luck. Or fate. I'm not sure there's a difference anymore. The coffee arrived. Naomi wrapped her hands around the cup like she needed the warmth. Jae-sung waited. He'd learned patience in rooms where silence was a weapon. Where the first person to speak lost leverage. But this wasn't business. This was the woman who'd disappeared with his heart. And apparently, his children. Their names, he said finally. I want to know their names. Naomi's breath caught. Kai. River. Sage. Her voice softened on each one. Kai is the oldest by 3 minutes. River is the middle. Sage is... He's the smallest. The one who looked back at you yesterday. Kai, River, Sage. The names settled into Jae-sung's chest like stones. You named them without me. I named them without you knowing they existed, Naomi corrected. Her tone wasn't defensive, just sad. There's a difference. Then explain it. He leaned forward. Explain why you disappeared. Why you kept them from me. Why you let me spend 6 years thinking you'd just... given up. Walked away. Naomi's eyes glistened. Because staying would have killed you. The words hung between them like smoke. Jae-sung's expression didn't change. But something inside him went very still. What are you talking about? She set down her coffee. Her hands trembled. Do you remember the last night we were together? Of course I remember. How could he forget? They'd had dinner at that tiny restaurant near Hongdae. She'd laughed at something he said, kissed him goodnight, told him she loved him. The next morning she was gone. That night, Naomi said slowly, I couldn't sleep. You'd gotten a call around 2 a.m. You left the apartment. You thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. Jae-sung's jaw tightened. He remembered the call. A situation that needed handling. The kind of situation that happened in his world. The world he'd tried to keep separate from her. I followed you, Naomi continued. I know I shouldn't have. But I was worried. You'd been distant for weeks, taking calls in other rooms, coming home with blood on your shirts you thought I didn't notice. Naomi, I saw what you did. Her voice cracked. In that warehouse by the river, I saw you with those men. I saw... She stopped, closed her eyes. I saw who you really were. The air between them turned cold. Jae-sung's hands were flat on the table, steady. But his mind was racing. That night, the warehouse, the rival family that had been moving product through their territory without permission. He'd handled it, quietly, permanently, the way his father had taught him. You witnessed everything. Naomi's eyes opened. I saw you give the order. I saw what happened after. And then I saw the man in the corner, the one who was taking pictures, recording it. Jae-sung went very still. What man? Older, 50s maybe. He had a camera with a long lens. He was documenting everything. And when you left, when your men left, he made a phone call. I heard him say your name, say that he had proof, that he could bring down your entire family. The world tilted. Jae-sung had spent 6 years believing the hit on his organization that spring had been bad luck. A rival family getting bold, a leak in their security. But if someone had documented that night, if they had proof, why didn't you tell me? Because they would have killed you to cover it up. Naomi's voice broke completely now. Your own family, Jae. If they knew someone had that kind of evidence, if they knew you'd been compromised, you would have been the first body in the river. She wasn't wrong. In his world, liability was a death sentence, even for the boss's son. So you ran, Jae-sung said quietly. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks later. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Triplets. The doctor said it was a miracle. But all I could think was, how do I keep them safe? How do I keep you safe? If that man came forward, if your family found out, you should have told me. So you could do what? Naomi's voice rose. Get yourself killed protecting me? Get our babies killed because you couldn't walk away? You were 26, Jay. You were your father's heir. You couldn't just disappear. So you did it for me. I did it for us. She wiped her eyes. I changed my name, moved to London, worked 3 jobs to keep us hidden. Every day I wondered if that man would come forward, if your family would find me, if... She stopped. Jae-sung's hand moved across the table. Slow, deliberate. He covered hers. Her breath caught. Did he? Jae-sung asked. Did the man ever come forward? No. Naomi's voice was barely a whisper. I've been waiting 6 years, but nothing. It's like he vanished, or he was taken care of. Naomi's eyes widened. Jae-sung's expression was unreadable, but inside, pieces were clicking into place. That spring. The leak. The 3 men who disappeared from a rival family without explanation. His father had handled it, and Jae-sung had never asked questions, because in his world you didn't. You've been running from a ghost, he said quietly. I've been protecting our children from your world. Naomi pulled her hand back. And I'd do it again, even if it meant I never knew them. Especially then. Her voice was fierce now. Because knowing them would mean choosing them, and choosing them would mean leaving everything you'd built. Your family. Your power. Your entire life. You don't think I could do that? I think you'd try. Naomi's smile was broken. And then I think your world would pull you back. And our boys would grow up watching their father become the kind of man I saw in that warehouse. The kind of man who solves problems with violence, who can't escape what he is. The accusation landed like a blade between his ribs. Because she was right, wasn't she? He'd spent 6 years becoming exactly that man. Colder. Harder. More willing to do what was necessary. He'd buried the part of himself that had loved her, and built an empire on its grave. What do you want from me? Jae-sung asked. His voice was quiet, empty. Naomi looked at him for a long time. Nothing, she said finally. I want nothing from you. We came here for a vacation. A chance for the boys to see the ocean. We're leaving tomorrow. You'll never see us again. That's not your choice to make. It's the only choice that keeps them safe. From what? From me? From everything you are. The words cut deeper than any knife. Jae-sung stood. The chair scraped against tile. I have 3 sons, he said. Each word measured, controlled. 3 sons who don't know I exist. You don't get to decide if I'm part of their lives. Not anymore. Jay, I'll give you today. He pulled out his wallet, dropped euros on the table. Tomorrow morning, we talk again. With them. They deserve to know who I am, even if you think I'm a monster. He walked toward the door. Jae-sung. He stopped. Didn't turn. You're not a monster, Naomi said quietly. That's the problem. Monsters don't feel what you're feeling right now. Monsters don't have anything left to lose. Jae-sung's hand tightened on the doorframe, then he walked out. Into the Italian morning. Into the impossible space between the man he'd become and the father he'd never had the chance to be. Behind him, through the cafe window, Naomi sat with her head in her hands, crying for the love they'd lost, and the children caught between truth and survival. Mira was waiting in their hotel suite when Jae-sung returned, not at the spa. Not shopping, waiting. She sat on the white sofa by the window, still in her silk robe, a cup of tea cooling on the glass table beside her. Her eyes tracked him as he entered. Calm. Assessing. The look she wore at her father's business dinners when negotiations turned sharp. How was your walk? She asked. Her voice was pleasant. Neutral. Dangerous. Jae-sung closed the door. Fine. You were gone 2 hours. I needed to think. About what? He moved to the minibar, poured water he didn't want, anything to avoid the weight of her gaze. About us, the wedding, adjusting to married life. Mira set down her teacup with precision. Liar. The word landed soft, but absolute. Jae-sung turned. His wife sat with her legs crossed, her expression unchanged, but something in her eyes had shifted, sharpened. Excuse me? You're lying to me. Mira's tone didn't rise. You've been lying since we arrived. And I've been patient. I've been understanding. But I'm not stupid, Jae-sung. I didn't marry a stupid man, and I'm certainly not one myself. He said nothing. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the coastline like she was memorizing it. There's a woman, Mira said quietly. Here, at this hotel. You saw her yesterday in the lobby. You went white. You could barely speak. And this morning you left at 8:30 to meet someone at a cafe 2 blocks from here. Jae-sung's expression stayed neutral, but inside, something went cold. How do you... I had you followed. She said it simply. Matter of fact. Not by anyone you'd recognize. My father's people, not yours. They're very discreet. Of course she did. Mira was the daughter of a shipping magnate who'd built an empire on knowing things other people tried to hide. She'd been raised in boardrooms where information was currency. Why would marriage be different? Her name is Naomi Laurent, Mira continued. She's staying in room 447, traveling with 3 children, boys, identical triplets, 5 years old. She turned. Yours? The question hung in the air like a blade. Jae-sung could lie, should lie, protect what was left of this marriage with the same ruthlessness he protected everything else. But looking at Mira, at the woman he'd promised honesty, even when he couldn't promise easy, he couldn't. Yes. The word came out quiet. Final. Mira didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't cry. She just nodded, like she'd already known. How long have you known about them? Since yesterday, in the lobby. So you married me 3 days ago with no idea you had children? Yes. Mira walked to the sofa, sat back down, her hands folded in her lap. Tell me everything. And he did. Not because she demanded it, but because after 6 years of silence and 3 days of lies, the truth felt like the only thing left that mattered. He told her about Naomi, about the love that had felt like drowning and breathing at the same time, about the morning she disappeared without explanation. He told her about the warehouse, the violence, the witness with the camera. He told her about this morning, the cafe, the names of 3 boys he'd never met, Kai, River, Sage. When he finished, Mira was quiet for a long time. The Mediterranean breeze moved through open windows. Somewhere below, tourists laughed. Life continued like nothing had broken. Do you love her? Mira asked finally. I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Jae-sung sat across from her. I loved who she was 6 years ago, before she left, before this. But the woman in that cafe? I don't know her anymore. But you want to. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Mira's smile was sad. I knew you weren't in love with me, she said quietly. When you proposed, I knew. But I thought... She stopped. I thought respect and partnership would be enough. That we could build something real even if it didn't start with passion. Mira, let me finish. Her voice was gentle but firm. I thought I could be the wife you needed. The woman who understood your world. Who didn't ask questions about the blood on your shirts or the late-night calls. Who played her part perfectly. You have been. I've been a placeholder. Mira's eyes glistened but no tears fell. For the woman you actually wanted. The one who left. That's not... It is. She stood. And now she's back. With your children. With 6 years of answers you've been searching for. And I'm... She laughed. Bitter. Small. I'm the wife you married on your way to someone else. Jae-sung felt something crack in his chest. I chose you. You chose safety, convenience. A marriage that made sense on paper. Mira walked to the bedroom. Stopped at the doorway. But sense isn't love, and paper burns. What are you saying? She looked back at him. I'm saying meet your sons. Learn the truth. Figure out who you want to be. Her voice softened. And when you do, if you still choose me, if you can look at me and honestly say you want this marriage, I'll be here. And if I can't, Mira's smile was heartbreaking. Then I'll sign the papers, and I'll tell my father the truth, that I married a man who was already in love with someone else. and that some ghosts are too beautiful to bury. She disappeared into the bedroom. The door closed with a soft click. Jae-sung sat in the empty suite, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt suffocating. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The boys are at the beach, near the lighthouse. If you want to meet them, really meet them, you know where to find us. N. He stared at the screen. Behind that bedroom door was a woman who'd offered him an impossible kindness, who'd looked at his betrayal and given him permission to choose something else. At the beach was a woman who'd run from him to protect him, who'd raised his children alone for 6 years because she believed his world would destroy them. And somewhere between the two was the man he'd become, the crime lord who controlled everything, the husband who'd made promises, the father who'd just discovered he had sons. Jae-sung stood, grabbed his jacket, walked out of the suite. He didn't go back to the bedroom to tell Mira where he was going. She already knew. Some choices make themselves. The hard part is living with what they cost. The lighthouse stood white against blue sky. Waves crashed against rocks below. Salt air. Seabirds calling. The kind of afternoon that belonged in memory even while it was happening. Jae-sung walked across warm sand, his shoes in his hand, his heart in his throat. 50 yards ahead, Naomi sat on a blanket with 3 boys. They were building something in the sand. A castle, maybe. Or a fortress. Their laughter carried on the wind like music he'd never learned to play. He stopped at the edge of the blanket. All 4 of them looked up. The boys stared with identical faces. Dark hair, his eyes, Naomi's mouth. A perfect blend of the love they'd made and the life they'd lost. "Boys," Naomi said quietly. She hesitated. "This is someone I'd like you to meet." The smallest one, Sage, tilted his head. "Are you the man from the hotel?" Jae-sung's throat closed. "Yes." "You looked sad," Sage said. "Why were you sad?" "Because I just found out you existed. Because I've missed 5 years of your life. Because I don't know how to be your father." "I was surprised," Jae-sung said instead. "I wasn't expecting to see..." He stopped. "I wasn't expecting to see people I cared about." "You care about us?" The middle boy, River, frowned. "But we just met you. Sometimes you care about people before you meet them." "That's silly." But River smiled. The oldest, Kai, said nothing. Just watched with careful eyes that reminded Jae-sung of himself at that age. Already learning to measure the world, to calculate danger. Jae-sung sat down on the sand, not on the blanket, not yet. He hadn't earned that. "What are you building?" he asked. "A fortress," Kai said, "with walls and a moat, so nothing can get in." "That's smart." River wanted to build a castle, but castles aren't safe. Fortresses are better. The boy was 5 years old and already thinking about defense, about keeping threats out. Jae-sung's chest ached. "What do you think?" Sage asked suddenly. He held up a seashell. "Should this be the flag or the treasure?" "Both," Jae-sung said. "The best things are always both." Sage beamed. Naomi's eyes met Jae-sung's over the boys' heads. Her expression was complicated. Sad and grateful, and terrified all at once. For the next hour, Jae-sung sat in the sand with 3 boys who didn't know he was their father. He helped build walls that would wash away with the tide. Listened to Sage explain the difference between sand crabs and hermit crabs. Watched Kai calculate the exact angle for the moat so water would flow properly. Heard River talk about wanting to be a marine biologist who also played guitar. And slowly, carefully, he started to understand what he'd missed. Not just the years, not just the milestones, but the moments. The small, ordinary, beautiful moments that make up a childhood. The way Sage hummed while he worked. The way River asked questions about everything. The way Kai protected his brothers without being asked, always positioning himself between them and the water, between them and strangers, between them and anything that might hurt. Just like Jae-sung had learned to do. "Time to wash up," Naomi said finally. "We need to get back before dark." The boys groaned but obeyed. They ran toward the water to rinse sand from their hands. Jae-sung and Naomi stayed on the blanket. "They're remarkable," he said quietly. They're yours. Naomi's voice cracked. In every way that matters, Kai has your strategic mind. River has your curiosity. Sage has your heart. The one you think you buried. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Be what they need. Jae-sung watched the boys splash in shallow water. I'm not a good man, Naomi. You know what I am, what I do, the world I live in. How do I be a father when you're human? She turned to him. That's all they need, Jay. Not perfection, not power. Just someone who shows up, who tries, who loves them even when he's scared. I don't get scared. Liar. But she smiled. You're terrified right now. I can see it. He was. More terrified than he'd been in any warehouse, any negotiation, any moment where his life hung in the balance. Because those were situations he could control. This? 3 boys who had his eyes and deserved better than his world. There was no controlling that. Come back with me, he said suddenly. Naomi's breath caught. What? To Seoul. To wherever you want. I'll make it safe. He stopped. I'll leave. The family. The organization. All of it. I'll walk away. Jae-sung. I'll find something else. Something clean. Legal. I have money. Resources. Connections outside the... He stopped. I can be different. For them. For you. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. You'd really do that? Yes. You'd give up everything you built? I'd give up everything I am. She touched his face. Gentle. Sad. That's exactly why I can't let you. What? Because you'd resent it eventually. Resent me. Resent them. Her voice broke. You'd wake up one day and realize you traded power for family and wonder if it was worth it. And that doubt, that resentment, would poison everything. You don't know that. I do. She pulled her hand back. Because I know you. The man you are. The one who needs control. Who solves problems by breaking them. You can't just turn that off. Not forever. Then what do you want from me? I want you to be sure. Naomi stood. I want you to go back to your wife, your life, your world. And I want you to decide, really decide, if you're willing to give it all up. Not in a moment of emotion. Not because you feel guilty or scared or desperate, but because it's genuinely what you want. I already know. You don't. She was crying now. You know you want to try. That's different. Trying means you keep one foot in your old life, just in case. And our boys, they deserve a father who's all in, not someone who's halfway between 2 worlds. The boys ran back, dripping and laughing. Mom, did you see how far River threw the shell? I saw, baby. Kai looked between Jae-sung and Naomi, his small face serious. Are you our dad? He asked suddenly. The world stopped. Naomi's breath caught. Jae-sung looked at the boy, at Kai, at this child who'd learned to read danger, to ask hard questions, to protect his brothers. Yes, he said. Simple, true, irrevocable. Kai nodded slowly. Are you going to stay? And there it was. The question that mattered, the one that would define everything. Jae-sung looked at Naomi, at the boys, at the fortress they'd built that